The Washington Pro Wrestling may work in our favor and block or at least revise some of these deals so that we have some advantage for us, not just for those who want tax havens, cheap labor, and the ability to hide assets. Now, never mind the fact that the populations of these countries are a fraction of ours. So the idea that they're going to buy our products to create jobs and boost our economy is preposterous. A trade deal with India, Brazil, a good deal with China. That'd be some jobs. A deal with Panama? Really? Democratic Congresswoman Linda Sanchez serves on the President's Export Council and the Ways and Means Committee's Trade Subcommittee. Even better, she agrees with those of us who see these particular deals as bad deals. Congresswoman, it's a pleasure to see you again.
Thank you for having me.
Trade deals on principle can create tremendous flow of investment and jobs to any country. Fair?
Potentially, yes.
At the same time, we continue to seem to entertain trade deals that explicitly don't do that and have other specific benefits for wealthy interests, whether it's tax havens, cheap labor, or whatever it is. And I think that confuses people because the rhetoric around trade can be very appealing and the benefits of trade are very concrete. And yet when people do it, they push for it, say, okay, let's do this, they get punched in the face. And worse, they lose their job and we watch our country spiral into poverty.
Correct. You've hit the nail on the head. I couldn't have said it better myself.
So who's doing this?
Well, the fact of the matter is that trade deals that have been pushed under the Bush regime and now that Republicans are calling for Obama to move forward are based on
Hold on. And with all due respect, I've heard your president and the president in general advocate these deals explicitly absent any Republican pressure. So to suggest this is a Republican agenda strikes me as incomplete information.
Well, you didn't allow me to finish.
Sorry.
I would have said Republicans are newly calling on the president to move forward these trade deals, and there has been a desire by the Obama administration to move these deals forward. Some of the trade agreements have had minor changes to it, but the fact of the matter is the fundamental changes that need to be made to the current sort of template for trade agreements, they need these vast improvements if we're going to make trade work for the American worker. The fact of the matter is the United States has been hemorrhaging manufacturing jobs since 2001. There are about 5.4 million manufacturing jobs that have disappeared, and in large part because of these so-called trade agreements that are supposed to create markets for us to export into, which sounds great and would be great for the American economy, but little do we realize that in these trade agreements that have been negotiated, we are giving big advantages to countries to export to the United States, all under the guise that cheap consumer goods are good for Americans. Well, okay, but if you're an American who loses your job because of these trade deals, doesn't matter if toothpaste is 50 cents less. If you don't have a paycheck, you can't buy toothpaste at all.
The thing that's most outraging about this is when you dig to the bottom of the rabbit hole, what you find is that it's not China in lobbying U.S. Congress people to do these agreements, for instance. It is American CEOs. American treasonists, if you will.
Large multi-corporations who stand to benefit, by the way, from moving operations overseas, oftentimes to developing countries that don't have strong labor protections. Let's take Colombia, for example. Colombia has the highest rate of murders of union activists in their country, and folks in the United States may say, well, what do we care about union activists in Colombia? Well, the fact of the matter is, if you have no right to bargain for better wages, then you're basically forced to work subsistence wages, and the American worker cannot simply compete with subsistence wages in Colombia. So what happens? Large U.S. corporations move their manufacturing overseas because guess what? They can pay pretty much nothing to these workers. How does that help the American worker? It doesn't,
right,
but it certainly helps that corporation because they make a heck of a lot more money.
But let's get into this a little bit because it's easy to demonize or vilify the American corporate CEO who is seeking these advantages. But at the end of the day, the people who are paid by way of tax dollars from the American people to defend the principles and integrity of this country from any special interest, whether it's a multinational corporation or a healthcare company or an energy company or anybody else. I pay taxes. You pay taxes. The panelists on this show pay taxes. Every human being who works in this country pays taxes to hire a staff of people, the Congress, the president, etc., to defend the integrity and the principled interests against that. And so you sit around, you're like, oh, well, if only the corporations weren't so evil. No, no, no. And I'm not even saying you're saying that, by the way. I'm saying that people fall into that because it's easy to make it their fault. But the fact of the matter is, we don't know. The American people are confused as to why the politicians we pay are so willing to do such obviously destructive deals that clearly could be done differently. It's easy to point at the CEOs, but it's the politicians that we don't understand.
Clearly, there are a lot of people in the government that don't understand that the current model for trade is not working for American workers. But with one twist to what you just said, I would agree. A lot of times the American public doesn't know how bad these trade deals are.
For sure.
They are just assuming that it's going to create all this business between the United States and these other countries, and that somehow that's going to be good for them.
Yeah.
The fact of the matter is, they themselves, the workers themselves, often vote against their own interests because they're electing members to represent them in the Congress to create policy with respect to trade that hurts them economically, and yet they're voting for these people to remain in office. So there's a lot of blame to go around, but certainly, you know, the more I think that people understand what is in these trade agreements, the less likely they are going to be to want to support these policies or support the people who are pushing these policies.
The mindless rhetoric of the word free is very powerful, even if what you're doing is a rigged agreement with currency manipulation, back-end tax deals, and all the rest of it. You just tell people it's free. And you're off to the races. Congresswoman, thank you for your efforts in regard to this, and not only to work on it directly, but to educate others to help better understand it. Appreciate it.
My pleasure. All right. Thanks again.
Linda Sanchez, again, on the trade, the President's Export Council.